In a dim corner of 19th century Berlin, in the smoke and chatter of a small tavern, a quiet man sits apart. He listens while others argue about the fate of God, reason, and the state. They are the young Hegelians, burning with the dream of reform, of liberty, of a better world. He seems harmless, unremarkable even, with a pale face and calm eyes. But behind that calmness is something else, something dangerous. His name is Max Stirner, and soon he will write a book that kills every ideal his companions live for. He does not shout or preach. He only watches and he smiles, for he sees something they do not. He sees that every man in that room, though he calls himself free, kneels to invisible masters. Some bow to God, some to reason, some to humanity, but they all bow. They all believe in something higher than themselves. And that, Stirner thinks, is the essence of their slavery. They call it truth or morality or justice. He calls it a ghost, a spook, and he has come to exorcise them all. The century in which Stirner lived was full of faith in progress. People believed that reason could build a perfect society, that freedom could be defined in laws and constitutions, that man could find meaning in collective ideals. But Stirner looked at this optimism and saw only another cage. Every noble word, God, people, state, duty, love, was for him a chain, disguised as virtue. He would strip them bare. He would reveal that behind every sacred principle stands the same thing: the demand that you give yourself away. The world he opens before us is not warm. It is not comforting. It is a world in which every value must be questioned until nothing sacred remains. Not religion, not morality, not even the idea of humanity itself. Stirner looks at the long history of mankind and sees not enlightenment, but a great mistake. The mistake of believing that something beyond the self deserves obedience. He tells us that the only real sin is self-denial. He writes, "I am owner of my might, and I am so when I know myself as unique." That word, unique, is the center of his vision. For Stirner, you are not a servant of ideas, not a fragment of some higher essence. You are not a child of God, nor a citizen of the state, nor a part of humanity. You are simply you, an unrepeatable existence, a singular force. The world has told you that to live well, you must serve something greater. Stirner whispers back that there is nothing greater. Everything that claims your loyalty is a phantom, and the only real thing is your own being. But he does not mean selfishness in the simple, vulgar sense. The ego he speaks of is not greed or vanity. It is deeper than that. It is the recognition that all things, laws, truths, relationships, are instruments of power. And the self that knows this uses them instead of being used by them. Morality says you must love others. Religion says you must love God. Society says you must work for the good of all. Stirner answers, "I love what I love because it is mine to love. I give because I want to, not because I must. I create my meaning, my world, my truth. Beyond that, there is only smoke." To many, this sounds monstrous. Without morality, what stops chaos? Without ideals, what guides man? But Stirner laughs at the question. He says, "The chaos you fear is already within you. You wear a mask to hide it, and you call that mask morality. You obey because you fear yourself, and the world rewards your fear by calling it goodness. You become a tame animal, proud of your leash." Stirner's voice cuts through that illusion like a blade. He tells you to look into the abyss and recognize yourself in it, to see that there was never a master, only your own submission. His book, The Ego and Its Own, was published in 1844. It sold poorly. Critics called it absurd, immoral, insane. Even his friends turned against him. Feuerbach, the humanist, said Stirner had destroyed all grounds for ethics. Marx called him a petty bourgeois egoist. Yet quietly, the book survived. It haunted libraries and reappeared in whispers among radicals, nihilists, and poets. For those who read it, it was like staring into the sun. It blinded, but it also burned away everything false. To read Stirner is to stand before a mirror that shows no reflection but your own. It is to feel the ground of meaning dissolve under your feet. He gives no system, no promise, no comfort. He offers only this: the courage to say, "I am," and to mean it without apology. He teaches that you do not belong to the world. The world belongs to you for as long as you can hold it. So when you walk through his philosophy, you walk through ruins, the ruins of gods and nations, of morality and truth. It is a desert of freedom, where nothing is sacred and everything is possible. It is dark, yes, but it is honest. In that darkness, you find no commandments, no eternal laws, only the echo of your own will. And in that echo, perhaps, the beginning of power. That is where Stirner begins, in negation, in defiance, in solitude. But from that emptiness, he builds a strange kind of affirmation, the affirmation of the self that no longer kneels, the one who sees through all illusions and says, I am my own cause, I am my own law, I am my own world. In every age, men have believed in something sacred. They have built temples, churches, nations, and systems of morality to give that sacred thing a home. They have sacrificed themselves for it, killed for it, and died for it. They have called it God, truth, reason, humanity, justice. But to Stirner, all these names are the same lie wearing different masks. The sacred, he says, is nothing but an invention, a phantom that demands worship, obedience, and guilt. When Stirner looks at the moral world, he does not see virtue. He sees possession. He sees human beings possessed by their own creations. The priest is possessed by God. The patriot is possessed by the nation. The reformer is possessed by justice. The philosopher is possessed by truth. Each one kneels before an ideal and forgets that it was born in his own mind. The sacred begins as imagination, but it ends as a master. Stirner calls these masters spooks, and he means it literally. They are ghosts, ideas that float above men, invisible yet powerful, ruling them from within. You think you are acting freely, but your freedom is scripted by the ghosts you believe in. You call something good because the ghost whispers that it is good. You call something evil because the ghost tells you to fear it. The world becomes haunted by abstractions, and you, the living, obey the dead. He writes that man has become a spiritualized slave. Once we were ruled by kings and priests, now we are ruled by principles. The tyranny has only changed its form. The whip has become an idea, and the worst part is that we consent to it. We call it progress. We tell ourselves that the old superstitions are gone, but they have only changed their names. Religion becomes morality, faith becomes ideology, God becomes humanity. And so the chains continue. Stirner looks at the moral man, the so-called good citizen, and sees a hypocrite afraid of his own desires. Morality, he says, is built on fear, fear of chaos, fear of guilt, fear of being one's own master. The moral man says, I must do good. But who decided what good is? Who decided that this command deserves your obedience? You did not. It was given to you. It was placed in your mind long before you could question it. Morality begins in childhood as training. We are taught not to lie, not to steal, not to desire too much. But the child's question, why, is never truly answered. Because behind every moral law, there is no reason, only authority. Stirner does not deny that rules can be useful. He denies that they are sacred. He says, use them when they serve you, abandon them when they do not. The moral man says, you must not kill. Stirner answers, you should not kill, if it serves you not to. The moralist shudders, calling this nihilism. But Stirner smiles, because he knows that beneath every moral system, the same law of self-interest is hiding. Even the saint who sacrifices himself for others does so because he desires it. He serves his own satisfaction in obedience. He finds pleasure in submission and calls it holiness. To Stirner, this is the most cunning illusion of all, that sacrifice is noble. It is the perfect trap because it makes slavery feel like virtue. The moral man is proud of his chains. He says, I am good because I obey. Stirner tears that pride apart. He says you obey because you are afraid of yourself. When he attacks morality, he is not inviting cruelty. He is stripping away its false divinity. He is saying, stop worshipping the idea of good and evil as if they exist outside you. There is only what you want, and what stands in your way. There is only your power, and the power of others. When you act, do it with full awareness that it is your will that commands, not a ghost. If you help someone, do it because it pleases you. If you refrain from harm, do it because you choose peace. But never again say that you are obeying a higher law. There is none. The moral world collapses under this thought. The priests lose their authority. The philosophers lose their systems. Even the revolutionaries, who dream of justice, lose their cause. Because once you realize that all ideals are human inventions, there is no longer a sacred side to fight for. There is only conflict, desire, creation, destruction, all expressions of life itself. It is easy to misunderstand Stirner as a destroyer who leaves nothing standing. But in truth, He is only destroying the false walls we build around ourselves. He is not against life. He is against illusion. He sees that moral systems turn living men into obedient machines, repeating phrases like the good of all, the right thing, duty, while forgetting that these phrases mean nothing unless someone gives them meaning. And who gives them meaning? You do, you always did. The sacred has no life of its own. It feeds on yours. So he tells you to take it back. Take back the power you gave to morality, to God, to the state. Let the ghosts starve. Let them fade into silence. Then look at yourself. Stripped of every rule and every justification, you will see something raw, maybe even frightening. But that is you, the one thing that was real all along. Stirner calls that recognition the beginning of ownness. It is the moment when you stop asking what is right and start asking what is yours. It is not about conquest or greed, it is about authenticity. To be own means to act from yourself, to think from yourself, to no longer be possessed by the words of others. It means to be the source of your own value. And that, he says, is the only real freedom. We are so used to worshipping ideas that we forget the world existed before them. Stirner reminds us. He drags us out of the temple and points at the bare earth. There are no commandments here, only choices. The sky is empty, but the heart is full. You can fear that emptiness, or you can breathe it in. For the first time, you see that morality was never written in the stars. It was written in your mind, and you hold the pen. There is a moment after you strip away every illusion when the world feels silent. The great words have died. God, nation, humanity, truth. The moral walls have fallen. You stand alone, surrounded by nothing but the echo of your own thoughts. It feels like a graveyard, but to Stirner, this silence is not death. It is birth, the birth of the unique one. He calls it der Einzige, the unique. Not the individual as society defines it, but something deeper, something unrepeatable. The unique one is not a concept, not a category, not even something that can be described. Because the moment you describe it, you turn it into another ghost. Stirner insists that the self cannot be captured by words or systems. You are not an example of anything. You are an event, a presence. For centuries, philosophers tried to define man. They said man is a rational animal, a moral being, a child of God, a political creature. But every definition, Stirner says, is a cage. It makes you into an object, something that can be studied, judged, or controlled. It turns you into property, someone else's idea of what you are. The unique one breaks every definition. It cannot be reduced to reason or morality or spirit. It simply is. When Stirner writes about the unique, he writes like someone pointing at something obvious yet invisible. He says, look at yourself. Before you are a worker, a citizen, a believer, you are something that cannot be named. You exist before language, before law. You exist even before you think. The mind, the soul, the conscience, they are all tools you use, but they are not you. You are the one who uses them. The unique one is the master of its thoughts, not their slave. Most people, Stirner says, are haunted by their own ideas. They create gods, then bow to them. They create morals, then punish themselves with them. They invent truth, then fear to contradict it. The unique one sees through this. It knows that ideas are instruments, not idols. They are there to serve the self, not to rule it. To live as the unique means to treat everything, even your own beliefs, as possessions. You own your faith, your love, your words, the way you own your clothes. You can wear them or discard them as you please. They are yours to use, not the other way around. Stirner's question is simple but terrifying. Do you own your ideas or do they own you? This question cuts deeper than morality. It reaches into every corner of life. Consider love. Most people think love means surrender, devotion, losing oneself in another. But to Stirner, love can also become a spook, a holy thing that demands sacrifice. The lover says, I give myself to you. And in that moment, he loses his ownness. Stirner answers, love. But love is your power, not your prison. Love because it fulfills you, not because it consumes you. Own your love. Do not be owned by it. The same applies to every ideal. Freedom, justice, equality, beautiful words, all of them. But if they become gods, they devour you. The unique one does not worship freedom. It uses freedom. It does not serve justice. It acts when it chooses. It does not live for humanity. It lives for itself, and through that, creates its own meaning. You can almost hear Stirner laughing as he writes. Not the laugh of cruelty, but of liberation. The laugh of a man who has walked out of every prison, who has burned every scripture. He says, all things are nothing to me, not in despair but in ownership. Because when everything is nothing to you, everything becomes possible. The world is no longer sacred. It is edible. It exists to be used, to be shaped, to be consumed. This is the most misunderstood part of Stirner. People think he teaches selfishness, as if he wants men to trample each other for gain. But his egoism is not the hunger of the greedy. It is the awareness of the free. The unique one does not compete with others, because there is no standard to compete by. You are not more or less unique than another. You simply are. Comparison belongs to the world of ideals, where things are measured and judged. In the realm of the unique, there is only expression, each life a singular manifestation of will. Imagine walking through a city filled with people. Each one believes they are acting freely, yet each one is guided by invisible commandments. They dress to impress, speak to belong, believe to be accepted. Every word they say echoes the spooks that own them. But then, somewhere among them, there is one who walks differently. He has no master in his head. He follows no invisible script. He may look like everyone else, but within him, there is a quiet clarity. He does what he desires, not because a law or a god approves, but because he is his own law. That is the unique one. It is a dangerous freedom. To live as the unique means to accept the full weight of your existence. There is no justification, no higher order to absolve you. When you act, it is because you chose to. When you err, there is no forgiveness but your own. You become the author and the judge, the creator and the destroyer. Many would rather die than bear that kind of solitude. But Stirner says it is the only life that is truly yours. In this philosophy, even death loses its horror. The unique one does not fear it, because death cannot take what was never owned by others. The life of the unique belongs entirely to itself, from the first breath to the last. There is no promise of heaven, no punishment of hell, no eternal record. There is only the fleeting, burning moment of existence, and that is enough. When you begin to see yourself through Stirner's eyes, the world changes shape. Every institution becomes transparent. Every holy word loses its weight. You see people worshipping money, morality, politics, love, and you understand that they are bowing to ghosts. You stop trying to convince them because you realize that your freedom cannot be shared like an idea. It can only be lived. And so Stirner's unique one stands apart, not as a rebel or a saint, but as something beyond both. He does not fight for truth or for lies because those belong to the same illusion. He acts, he desires, he creates, and when he is done, he moves on. He owes nothing to the world, just as the world owes nothing to him. He is not good, not evil, not moral, not immoral. He is simply his own. It is a lonely vision, but there is peace in it. For once you stop chasing ghosts, you find that reality itself is enough. The sound of your heartbeat, the breath in your lungs, the simple, unborrowed fact that you are here. That is the ground Stirner offers. Not salvation, not justice, but presence. The world belongs to you only in the instant you live it. Freedom, it's the word that lights revolutions, the word that nations go to war for, the word that men die believing in. But to Stirner, it's another trap, another ghost disguised as salvation. He looks at those who cry out for freedom and asks, freedom from what? And for what? He sees that men spend their whole lives chasing freedom, yet never possess themselves. They tear down one master only to build another. He says, freedom is the dream of slaves. Because when you desire freedom, you already accept that something outside you has power over you. You define yourself against it. You say, I want to be free from oppression, from God, from law, from the state. But in doing so, you still let those things define you. You remain chained to what you oppose. The dream of freedom keeps you bound to your enemies. Stirner tells us that what we really seek is not freedom, but ownness, the ability to possess ourselves and our world. Freedom in his eyes is a negative idea. It says only what you are free from, not what you are for. Ownness, by contrast, is positive. It is the active taking of your life into your own hands. It is not about being free from masters. It is about being master yourself. He gives a simple example. The child wants freedom from the father's authority. He grows up, becomes independent, and says, now I am free. But soon he finds new masters, laws, employers, ideologies, even his own conscience. He keeps fleeing from domination, yet never stops being dominated. Each escape brings a new prison. because his idea of freedom depends on what others do. Stirner says, stop trying to escape, stop fighting shadows. Instead, take ownership of your life. Use the world. Don't ask for freedom. Seize what you can hold. In his world, freedom is a begging word. Ownness is a creator's word. Freedom waits for permission. Ownness acts. Freedom dreams. Ownness consumes. Stirner's egoist does not demand rights. He exercises power. He does not petition the world to set him free. He declares, I am my own. It's a hard teaching because it strips away excuses. Once you accept ownness, you can no longer blame the world for your chains. If you are not free, it is because you have not taken possession of yourself. Every boundary becomes a question of strength, not morality. The question is never, am I allowed, but can I? This does not mean Stirner worships power in the vulgar sense. He is not preaching domination or cruelty. He is describing an existential stance. To own yourself means that you no longer let external forces dictate what you are. You become an author instead of a subject. You write your own law, and your actions become your signature. When Stirner says, all things are nothing to me, he means that the world has no claim on him unless he gives it one. But it also means that he has no claim on the world except what he can make his own. The egoist's relationship to existence is direct and honest. He does not pretend that justice or morality justify his desires. He simply acknowledges them. He acts and accepts the consequences. That acceptance is his true strength. Think of a man standing before a locked gate. The moral man wonders if he should pass. The political man waits for the law to permit him. The philosopher debates whether he has the right. The believer prays for a sign. The Stirnerian egoist tests the lock. If he can open it, he enters. If he cannot, he moves on. There is no guilt, no justification, no appeal to higher powers. There is only reality and will. In this way, Stirner reverses the moral universe. Where others ask what they should do, he asks what they can do. He replaces commandments with capacity. Do what you will, he might say, but know that it is you who wills it. This awareness turns even restraint into strength, because when you choose not to act, it is not submission, it is possession. You are holding your power, not losing it. The difference between freedom and ownness is the difference between a man who escapes his chains and one who melts them down to forge his own tools. Freedom can be taken away. Ownness cannot, because ownness is not a condition given by others. It is a relationship with yourself. He warns us that even revolutions, those great outbursts of human will, often fail for this reason. They replace one ghost with another. They overthrow kings and priests, only to enthrone the people or the state. They fight tyranny, then worship freedom as a new idol. But the true revolution, Stirner says, happens within. It is the moment when the individual stops asking for recognition and starts creating his own worth. In that moment, you realize how much of your life has been spent living for things that were never yours. You worked for the approval of others, obeyed laws you never wrote, followed ideas you never questioned. You were free perhaps in name, but not in essence. You were still living someone else's dream. Stirner's voice cuts through that fog. He says, take back your life. Make it yours, or you will be made by others. There is something dark in this command, but also something pure. Because ownness requires solitude. You cannot own yourself while clinging to collective illusions. You must walk away from them, even when it means standing alone. It is a freedom without witnesses, a power without validation. But in that solitude, you find something stronger than comfort, the truth of your existence, raw and undiluted. The egoist who reaches this point no longer needs to justify his life. He no longer seeks to prove his goodness or his worth or his freedom. He lives as one who has already taken possession. He speaks because he chooses to speak. He gives because he wishes to give. His yes means yes, his no means no. He is not moral, not immoral. He is sovereign. Stirner's word for this state, ownness, is not a slogan, but a transformation. It is what remains after you have burned every borrowed idea, after you have stared into the empty sky and felt no fear. It is the calm knowledge that you are the ground of your being. The world will still press upon you, demand your obedience, seduce you with ideals, but you will see them for what they are. Shadows passing across the surface of your will. To live this way is to carry a secret fire. Others may not understand it. They may call it arrogance, madness, isolation. But to Stirner, it is the only honest way to exist. The one who owns himself can never be conquered, because nothing owns him. When the last gods fall, when morality and truth lie in ruins, there is still one idol standing. It is the gentlest, most persuasive of all, the idol called humanity. Even those who abandon religion cling to it. They say, I no longer serve God, but I serve man. I live for the common good. I dedicate myself to the progress of our species. It sounds noble. It sounds humane. But to Stirner, it is the final disguise of slavery. He watches as the old altars crumble and new ones rise. The priest becomes the philosopher, the saint becomes the activist, and the gospel becomes social justice. The language changes, but the structure remains. People still bow before an invisible power, still sacrifice their lives to an abstract cause. The name of the master has changed from God to humanity, but the devotion is the same. Stirner sees this and laughs. He calls it the new religion. He says the humanists are more pious than the believers they mock. They think they have freed themselves, but they have only exchanged one phantom for another. God once demanded worship. Now humanity demands service. The old priest said, love thy neighbor. The new one says, serve mankind. But both commands have the same poison. They make your life belong to something other than yourself. He asks, what is humanity? Where is this sacred being you claim to serve? Have you ever met it? Have you spoken to it? You know men and women, faces and names, but not humanity. Humanity is a ghost, a word without a body. It is an idea that lives by feeding on your guilt. When you say, I must do this for humanity, you are speaking to a ghost and giving it your power. Stirner's critique is ruthless. He says, as long as you believe in humanity, you will never be free. Because humanity is the cleverest spook of all. It hides inside compassion. It turns your kindness into obedience. It whispers that self-interest is selfish, that pleasure is immoral, that the only good life is one lived for others. And so, even without a God, you remain a servant. He does not mock kindness itself. He mocks the morality that chains it. He says, help others if you wish to, but because it brings you joy, not because it fulfills an obligation. True compassion for Stirner is not a command. It is a choice. It comes from strength, not guilt. The weak man helps others to feel pure. The strong man helps because he wants to. In one, the act is worship. In the other, it is ownership. When he attacks the idea of humanity, he is not attacking people. He is attacking the illusion that people must be fused into a sacred collective, because every collective, no matter how beautiful its name, ends by devouring the individual. The church, the nation, the people, humanity, they all speak with the same voice. You are nothing without us. Stirner's reply is simple. Then I will be nothing, and in that nothing, I will be everything. He tells us that the love of humanity is a trick that keeps men from living for themselves. The revolutionary who claims to fight for the people still needs an ideal to justify his rage. He cannot simply say, I want power. He must say, I fight for freedom. The philanthropist cannot admit that generosity pleases him. He must say, I do it for others. The scholar cannot say, I seek truth because it fascinates me. He must say, I seek it for mankind. Every action must be sanctified by an abstraction. Without it, the ego trembles, afraid to stand alone. Stirner cuts that fear out by the root. He says, stop pretending. Admit what you are. Admit that you act from desire, from interest, from will. Admit that every ideal you serve is a mask for your own hunger. Once you admit it, you are free, because then you no longer need to lie to yourself. You can live honestly, without disguises. You can look at your motives and say, yes, this is mine. But such honesty is rare. Most people cannot live without their illusions. They need to believe in a purpose larger than themselves, or else they feel lost. Stirner understands this, and he does not condemn it. He only says, know what you are doing. If you must believe, believe as an owner, not a servant. Use your faith as your tool, not as your master. If you work for others, let it be your will, not your duty. If you fight for justice, let it be your power, not your obedience. This is where his thought becomes darkest and clearest. Because when you remove the sacred from humanity, nothing remains but individuals, each seeking their own way. No common good, no eternal law, no moral compass, just a field of wills, intersecting, colliding, negotiating. To most, this sounds like chaos, but to Stirner, it is life, real life, where no one pretends to be an angel, and no one hides behind causes. He knows that society cannot exist without some level of cooperation, but he insists that this cooperation must be born of interest, not duty. He imagines a world of egoists who come together because it benefits them, not because they worship the collective. He calls this the union of egoists, a gathering of free individuals who associate and separate as they wish. No laws, no oaths, no permanence, only agreements made and remade as long as they serve the will of each. When the bond no longer serves, it dissolves. There is no betrayal, no guilt, only movement. It's a vision that feels almost inhuman, yet strangely pure. It strips away all sentimentality and asks what remains of love, friendship, society, when you remove obligation. What is left, Stirner says, is what is real. If someone stays with you without duty, it means they truly desire you. If someone helps you without law, it means their will aligns with yours. In such a world, relationships become rarer but more honest. There is no pretending to care. There is only the truth of desire. And here, Stirner's darkness becomes a kind of light. Because beneath his cold logic, there is a fierce respect for the self. He refuses to let any idea, even the idea of humanity, erase the uniqueness of the individual. He says there is no mankind, only men. There is no common soul, only singular flames. And each flame has the right to burn as it will. It is a frightening doctrine because it offers no refuge. No divine plan, no moral order, no collective purpose. But it is also a clean doctrine, free of hypocrisy. It tells you that life belongs to no one but yourself. You are not here to serve or to fit into a grand design. You are here to live, to use, to create, to consume, to exist as you choose. And if the world calls that selfish, Stirner smiles, because he knows that only the self can live. The ghost of Max Stirner never really died. It just changed names. You can feel it whispering beneath Nietzsche's laughter, hiding behind his talk of the will to power, the Übermensch, the death of God. Nietzsche never mentions Stirner directly, though some say he read him in secret. Others think he avoided his name deliberately, as if fearing to be seen too close to the abyss he had already entered. But whether he read him or not, Stirner's shadow stands behind Nietzsche's words, silent and watching. The resemblance is uncanny. Both men detested moral idols. Both called for the destruction of sacred values. Both looked at the herd of men, trembling under their own ideals, and declared war on their illusions. When Nietzsche said, "God is dead," Stirner's ghost nodded. It had been dead since Stirner killed it 40 years earlier. And when Nietzsche said, "Become who you are," it echoed Stirner's cry. "I am nothing but myself." But there is a difference. Stirner was pure negation. He dissolved everything into the self. Nietzsche tried to rebuild. He wanted a world after the death of gods, a world of creators, of those who could forge their own values. He wanted art to replace religion and strength to replace faith. Stirner didn't care to replace anything. He said, "Once you have burned the altar, don't build a new one. Walk away." For Nietzsche, the death of God was a cosmic event, the opening of a new epoch. For Stirner, it was a personal liberation. Nietzsche's drama was written in thunder and prophecy. Stirner's was written in silence, in the quiet realization that no God, no ideal, no law has authority over you unless you let it. Stirner is colder. Nietzsche is passionate. Nietzsche calls for the overman, the artist of life. Stirner calls for the owner, the one who uses everything, including ideals, as his property. Nietzsche's hero creates new values. Stirner's egoist doesn't bother. He takes values as tools, toys, masks. To Nietzsche, that might have seemed too nihilistic, too empty, but Stirner would laugh at that. He would say, emptiness is freedom. When you stop worshipping meaning, you can finally use it. After Nietzsche, Stirner's influence became harder to trace, but it seeped into strange places. His ideas haunted anarchists, existentialists, surrealists, and even modern psychology. The anarchist movement, for example, split over him. Some saw him as an enemy of all cooperation. Others saw in him the purest form of freedom. He inspired thinkers like Emma Goldman and Benjamin Tucker, who admired his vision of an individual beyond all authority. But he also disturbed them, because Stirner's egoist doesn't want equality, doesn't want fraternity, doesn't even want justice. He wants only his ownness. Karl Marx, too, could not ignore him. In his youth, Marx had been fascinated and terrified by Stirner's book, The Ego and Its Own. He devoted hundreds of pages to attacking it in the German ideology, mocking Stirner as Saint Max. But the length of the attack betrays the wound. Marx saw in Stirner something that threatened his entire project, because Stirner's egoism dissolves the collective, the class, the revolution itself. If everyone follows Stirner, Marx's world collapses into a swarm of individuals, each pursuing their own power without guilt. Marx had to kill Stirner's ghost before his own system could stand. But the ghost escaped. It reappeared, again and again, in those who refuse to be defined. In existentialism, you can feel his pulse. When Sartre says that man is condemned to be free, Stirner's laughter echoes underneath. When Camus speaks of revolt without appeal to higher values, Stirner's cold smile flickers at the edge. Even psychoanalysis in its darker moments hints at him. The id, the drive, the unconscious self that mocks morality, all of it is the shadow of the egoist, wearing new names. In the 20th century, his ideas found their way into politics, art, even technology. Every movement that exalted individuality over the collective, whether in rebellion or excess, owed him a silent debt. You can see him in the punk's rejection of rules, in the hacker's defiance of systems, in the entrepreneur who worships freedom more than ethics. They may never have read the ego and its own, but they live its spirit. Stirner's egoist is not a historical figure. He is a recurring type, reborn whenever someone says, "I will not be used." And yet, Stirner remains obscure. No statues, no schools, no cults. He was erased from memory by those he offended and misunderstood by those he inspired. His book vanished for decades, ignored, dismissed, or banned. But perhaps that is fitting. For a man who worships nothing and serves no one, fame would be another chain. Stirner's victory is not to be known. It is to have infected thought itself. He succeeded when no one remembers his name, but everyone lives by fragments of his logic. Even Nietzsche's most daring ideas, beyond good and evil, self-creation, the will to power, can be seen as attempts to climb out of the crater Stirner left behind. Stirner had demolished the sacred. Nietzsche tried to dance on the ruins, but you cannot dance forever on ashes. At some point, the void stares back. Stirner never looked away. He accepted the void as his home. Today, when we speak of authenticity, self-ownership, self-creation, freedom from ideology, we are speaking his language without knowing it. The modern world, obsessed with personal freedom and self-definition, is half Stirnerian without realizing it. But the other half still clings to moral illusions, to collective redemption. Stirner's ghost lingers at the edge, whispering, "You cannot serve both freedom and faith. Choose." And maybe that's why his thought still feels dangerous. Because it leaves you naked. There is no comfort in it, no higher meaning to hide behind. It does not tell you how to live. It only tells you that no one else has the right to decide. You are alone with your will, your power, your desire. For most, that is unbearable. But for a few, it is the beginning of something vast. Imagine standing in a world stripped of all illusions. No gods above you, no sacred laws around you, no collective to hide within. Just you, alone, facing yourself. That is where Stirner leaves you. Not in despair, but in exposure. He tears away every mask until you stand naked before your own will. The air is cold there, but clean. You can finally breathe. He does not offer comfort. He offers clarity. He says, all the things you thought you had to serve, truth, morality, society, love, duty, were your own creations. You made them, and then you forgot that you did. You turned them into masters. You bowed to them. You let them rule you. But they were never real. They were shadows cast by your own fear. In Stirner's world, there is no good and evil, no right and wrong. There is only what you want and what stands in your way. There is no destiny, no divine plan. There is only the self, facing the chaos of existence, deciding what to take, what to ignore, what to become. It is terrifying because it means no one can save you, but it is liberating because it means no one can own you either. You are not a servant of humanity. You are not a child of God. You are not a tool of history. You are not even a piece of nature. You are something that uses all those things. You use language, you use belief, you use others, and they use you in return. The world becomes a field of ownership, not of duty. The question is no longer, what is right, but what is mine? And yet this darkness is not cruel. It is honest. Stirner's egoism is not a call to dominate, but to awaken. He does not say, enslave others. He says, stop enslaving yourself. Stop kneeling before the ghosts you made. Stop dying for words. Stop seeking approval from ideas that cannot feel. You owe nothing to anything that does not exist. This is why his philosophy feels like a knife. It cuts everything you thought was sacred. It even cuts the very hand that holds it, because Stirner will not let you turn even his own philosophy into a belief. He warns you not to make him another idol. "I have set my cause upon nothing," he wrote. "Not God, not truth, not even reason. Nothing. Because only from nothing can you be free." He is not the preacher of selfishness as we understand it. He is the preacher of sovereignty. To own yourself fully, to act without disguise, to speak without borrowed language, to love without obligation. That is his vision. It is darker than morality but brighter than hypocrisy, because it replaces duty with authenticity, guilt with power, servitude with ownership. When he says the unique one, he means that no word, no concept can capture you. You are not an example of humanity. You are not part of a category. You are the only you that exists. That is not arrogance, it is reality. You can dissolve into collectives if you wish, but that will never erase the fact that you stand alone in your own consciousness. No one else can live that life for you. It's a lonely truth, but loneliness is the birthplace of freedom. The egoist who walks this path finds a silence the world cannot touch. He no longer begs for validation from ideals. He no longer apologizes for existing. He simply acts. He does not justify. He does not explain. He moves through life like a storm through the sky, without permission, without guilt, without shame. Stirner does not promise happiness. He promises possession. He says, "Take what is yours. And if the world calls you a sinner, a nihilist, a monster, let it." Those are only words. You can use them too. He frees you not by giving you answers, but by burning every question that was designed to control you. And in the quiet that follows, you begin to sense what he truly meant. Freedom is not a political condition. It is not something granted by the state or the revolution. It is an inner act, the refusal to kneel. The moment you stop believing that anything outside you has authority over your will, you become untouchable. You can play any role, speak any language, live in any system, and still belong only to yourself. That is why Stirner remains dangerous. His philosophy cannot be absorbed by any ideology because it devours them from within. The left, the right, the atheist, the believer, they all break against him. Because the moment you make an idea sacred, Stirner's ghost appears to whisper, "You're serving again." He is not a prophet of destruction for its own sake. He is the mirror in which all falsehoods dissolve. The world we live in, obsessed with identity, morality, progress, is exactly the world he predicted, full of spooks disguised as ideals. Every movement that claims to speak for all, every cause that demands your obedience, is another altar waiting for your sacrifice. Stirner stands apart and says, "Burn them all." In the end, his philosophy is not darkness. It only seems dark because it removes the light of illusion. But once your eyes adjust, you begin to see. You see that every value, every God, every truth was your creation, and that you can create again. That is the true power he leaves behind, the ability to invent meaning rather than inherit it. So the question is not whether you agree with him. The question is whether you can bear the weight of freedom he offers. Because once you see the world as he saw it, you cannot unsee it. Every ideal looks like a trick. Every moral demand feels like a leash. Every voice that says you must becomes noise. What remains is silence. And in that silence, you hear yourself for the first time. That is the voice Stirner wanted you to find. Not his, not Nietzsche's, not any philosopher's. Your own. The one that exists before the world tells you who you should be. The one that does not beg, does not kneel, does not worship. The one that simply is. And maybe that is what he meant by setting his cause upon nothing. Because only when you stand upon nothing can you finally stand on your own.